My name is Nish Kumar and I am a comedian. I was born in Tooting in South London. My parents are very nice people who raised me and my brother in Croydon, which is not as bad as people made out. And by people, I mean me, usually for my own financial benefit on television. I was always a fan of comedy on television from the time where I was a very young kid. I think I have to credit or blame, depending on your opinion of my comedy, goodness gracious me, for at least planting the seed that it was possible for me to do this job, because as much as I loved comedy, it largely wasn't really done by people who looked like me. Occasionally there were characters on television shows who did look like me, but they were also voiced by white people. So it was a really transformative moment to see British Asians on television making comedy that was incredibly funny and felt at points subversive and satirical. I mean, it's a very roundabout way of saying you can't be what you can't see, but essentially it's that cliche dressed up with some personal experience. I started going to stand-up clubs when I was sort of 16, 17, and I went to see Ross Noble do tour shows in the West End, and I think that was the kind of final push that I needed to have a go. But then in terms of actually starting, it was only when I went to university. I went to Durham and there was a sketch comedy group there, and I joined that group, and through that I ended up going to the Fringe and seeing how the sort of infrastructure of a career in comedy is laid out, and understanding that there are comedy clubs in all of the towns and cities, and you could kind of cut your teeth there and learn how to be a comedian and then aim towards writing a sort of hour show in Edinburgh. I think there's a constant need that people have to separate themselves from the things in their background that help them, because you have this kind of idea that, oh no, I did it all on my own. But no, I was absolutely assisted, and where I went to university and the people that I met at university had a huge influence and facilitated my career. There are certain barriers that get put in your way in racial terms. I would like to think that that is changing a lot, and certainly I would hope that things have improved since 2007, 2008. I actually got sacked by my first agent, effectively, because I refused to do an Indian accent at an audition, because I thought it was offensive and terrible. And, so there was certainly, in the initial stages, there were a couple of difficult conversations and difficult moments that happened very specifically on racial lines. But I think, and I hope, that maybe we've evolved a little bit. If I was 16 now, I would feel quite demoralised by the economic situation that's in front of me. Listen, I don't come from, I come from a perfectly affluent background, but you realise that even for most people who come from a perfectly affluent background, there isn't necessarily 10 or 15 grand lying around, and that's the kind of money that is required as an initial investment to help you sort of get a show on its feet in Edinburgh. I was able to survive on the temp job where I was making £300 a week that was allowing me to go and do all these unpaid gigs in the evening. And at the moment, we thought at the time, in the immediate aftermath of the financial crisis, that we were having a difficult time of it. But things have just got worse and worse. And so I have nothing but sympathy for 16-year-old kids right now. Unless your dad has the same name as some enormous building in London, it's very difficult. I would say it is going to be difficult, but it is possible. And I think one of the most important things to do is to support each other as much as possible. And keep in mind that a career in the arts is not a competition, and there is space for everybody. And actually, one of the most important things you will find as you go is that you rely on your community and you build a family out of your contemporaries, and you will prop each other up and you will buoy each other along. Arts Emergency is more important now than maybe it's ever been, because there's no reason why arts or culture should be the preserve of the wealthiest. There's absolutely no reason for it at all. But it will become a playground for wealthy people's kids and nothing more, if we allow the status quo to continue and get worse, as it has done in the last 10-15 years. The chances of someone without connections getting into the creative and cultural industries hasn't improved for 40 years. And since the pandemic, things are worse than ever. We're at risk of losing out on a generation of talent. And when we shut out new voices, we all lose out. Please join the Arts Emergency Network and give £5 a month, or whatever you can afford, to transform a young person's life.